We're just going to wait a few more seconds, and then we're going to get started. Welcome back to class, guys. Let's get started. We're going to bow in. Attention and bow. Hope everyone's having a great day today. We're going to get started off with some flourishing techniques. We should be good to go. Okay, so we're just going to start things off with just a two-handed flourish. Just going to be working it gently back and forth. So when I do my flourish, guys, I want to try and make sure I keep it as tight to my body as possible. I'm going to be using my graphite bow today. Of course, you could still do this with a hardwood or a flexible wood bow. I like to mix it up personally for my kata. The competition kata, I like using my graphite bow, and the traditional ones, I like using a wood bow. Okay, so I'm going to be in left dominant now, trying to keep that bow again tight into my body without clipping my shins. As I go through this technique, I want to make sure that my wrists stay fairly loose, and that's going to help quite a bit with the flow. Okay, now I'm going to switch. I'm going to move to one-handed flourish. Just moving back and forth, nice and easy. I have like a little bit of shoulder sway when I go through. I find that that helps with just the speed of how quickly I can do that flourish. And I'm going to switch. I'm going left dominant, and if I like to keep one hand up just for a more polished look. Just back and forth, guys. This is a forward flourish. Okay. Now we're going to go reverse flourish. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing is my right foot's going to be in front. I'm going to use my right hand. And what I'm going to do is just lead with my pinky finger coming up and flourish across. On this one, I want to make sure that I keep my hand fairly loose. I don't want to tightly grip the bow the whole time. That's going to make it very rigid coming across. When you're learning, that's a nice way to do it. But as you get more comfortable, you're going to find that if you can keep that hand fairly loose when you're going through the technique, that's going to make it quite a bit easier for you. We're going to switch sides, going left dominant, coming through. The flourish, reverse flourish, guys, is one that when I'm doing this technique, I want to make sure I'm really careful that I don't clip my head. Okay, this is one that you actually could quite easily clip your head on if you're not paying close attention, especially when you're starting to spin the bow with a lot of speed. Next one we're going to do is a butterfly. So I'm going to start in a right dominant. I'm just going to hold my right hand. Left hand's going to go on top of the right. I open up the hand so it looks like a butterfly. I'm going to pull it down so both thumbs are down, both thumbs are up. And it's just going to go back and forth like that. I find for me, if I pump my shoulders a little bit, you guys will see how I'm kind of bringing up my elbows. It can actually help quite a bit with the speed of the bow when I'm going through that. You can start by looking at your hands. As you get more comfortable, try and not look at your hands. It should just become comfortable so that it feels just second nature. Just back and forth. I like doing like a spinning warm-up for when I'm getting ready to do training. It's just like a nice way to gently get the blood pumping, warm up the wrists, warm up the shoulders. Excuse me. We're going to start left dominant now. So I'm going to hold my left hand in front. I'm going to go right over left. Both thumbs are down and my hands are out, coming up. Now this time my right hand is on top. So I'm spinning it in a different direction this time. I'm going to do the same idea, only opposite of how I was doing right dominant, now that it's left dominant. And of course, the bow is spinning a different way. So everyone's going to have a more comfortable side they're doing it. Most people will be right dominant if you're right-handed, obviously. If you're left-handed, then it's going to be left dominant. So again, trying to not look at the bow if you're more comfortable with it. That takes time. You can try and increase the speed a little bit. Some people prefer doing this with a heavier bow. I actually find that when I use my rattan bow, it feels a little bit more comfortable. The graphite one's kind of light to do that technique, but I still like to do that. Excuse me, guys. Okay, next thing we're gonna do is a butterfly with a behind the back. So I'm gonna come around behind the back and then flip it up. If you guys notice, I pull it around and then I torque it up. So I'm pinky to pinky behind, and then I come around and I just do my butterfly. Pinky to pinky, butterfly. There's lots of variation you can do with this one. So you could come across, you could do a butterfly on the top, you could do it in the front. So it's a good way to get comfortable with the bow when you're warming up. Try and do it with your eyes closed, different directions, not looking at the bow, just a variety of the techniques. This one I prefer using my graphite bow. You can do it with a hardwood bow or a flexible bow like a wood one. There's a fair amount of torque on the wrist when you're coming around for this movement, but it's still very doable. You just have to make sure that you take caution when you're doing that behind the back movement. Now I'm going to go left dominant, so I'm going to come around. This time it comes pinky to pinky on my right side first, then it comes around on the left, right side, and around, right side. And this is thumb to thumb, okay? Going thumb to thumb. Good work, guys. Make sure that you're participating and not just eating Doritos on the couch watching. Okay, last one we're gonna do, guys, is it's kind of like a little bit of an advanced spin. So it's gonna go with a butterfly around. I'm gonna do a little flourish behind, and then I'm gonna do another flourish in the front. I like this one. It's kind of like, I've heard it referred to as an advanced spin. You can do it both ways. This one, it's kind of the flow of the bow. It keeps spinning. If you can do it with a lot of speed, this one really looks very impressive. I'm certainly not an all-star doing this one, but I do like the flow of it. It feels good. It really has to be one that you have good momentum on the bow. This one would be quite difficult to do. Clip my leg. Quite difficult to do with a hardwood bow if it's a heavier bow. Okay, let's shake it out. Today's class, guys, I'm just going to let's grab a quick drink. Today's class, we're going to be focusing on a good breakdown on Bo Kata 1. So if you're very comfortable with a bow, feel free to follow along and learn Bo Kata 1 with me. We're going to go from start to finish all the way through. And I'm going to give you guys a couple different angles to look at as we go through. Okay, so to start off this kata, I'm going to get in my attention stance and bow. My left foot's going to step out, and I'm going to come down into a ready stance with the bow. So I'm in a horse riding stance. Excuse me, horse riding stance. Both my feet are pointed forward, and that's nice and strong. So again, my left foot steps out. Attention, bow, left foot comes out. Good. Now keep in mind, guys, this is a competition or creative kata. So if you're looking for something to add to your repertoire for creative kata, you could take this one as a baseline and then modify as needed or take certain elements out of it. Start here. I'm going to come around. I'm going to do a crane stance angle block to my left-hand side. So I'm going to come across, angle block. I want to make sure that I have a nice angle on the bow when I'm coming through. So it's not a push block. It's an angle block, so I want to make sure I have that good angle. And then my crane stance, my front knee should be bent about 30 degrees. I like to tuck my foot behind on this crane stance. It stabilizes, looks polished. It's a nice way to do it. So attention, bow, ready position. Looking to my left, angle block crane stance. From there, I'm going to turn 180 degrees, forward stance, reverse grip. Reverse overhead rib strike, overhead front strike, 4-point. 1, 2, 3, 4, with a thrust and key up. Aye! Okay, let's go over that again. Attention, bow, ready stance, looking to my left, angle block, coming around, forward stance, reverse overhead rib strike, overhead rib strike. From here, I'm going to do a 4-point. 1, 2, 3, 4, using my hips. So now I'm going from a forward stance to a long forward stance. So I'm going to chamber the bow back, overhead front strike. Now when I'm looking, I want to make sure I have clear stance definition between a forward stance, which would be about 2.5 of my own foot lengths, long forward stance, 3 to 3.5 of my own foot lengths. My back leg is straight, my front knee is bent. I have good posture when I'm going through that technique. Let's practice that. I'm going to give you guys a follow along from the rear view. Attention, bow. We're going to go into our ready stance. To my left, angle block, rib strike, 4-point, 1, 2, 3, 4, forward stance, long forward stance, front thrust. Okay, we're going to build on that. I'm going to give you guys a front view again. So keep in mind when it's a front view, it's going to be a mirror image. Okay, so I had just finished my forward thrust in a long stance. So what I'm going to do here, guys, is I'm going to transition into an uppercut. So I'm here, coming across, uppercut. I'm going to do that in a back stance. From there, I'm going to go push block, chamber the bow, overhead front strike. Okay, so there's a fair amount going on there. Let's get back into that position from that long forward stance. I'm going to go uppercut, push block, chamber, overhead front strike. Okay, I'm going to add on just a little bit moving forward in this section. I'm going to go with a forward cross stance, and I'm going to step forward into a long stance, forward thrust, overhead knee strike. My foot is going to come up and across into a horse riding stance. I want you guys to watch how I manipulate the bow into a half circle movement. I want to do it with a high level of control. Okay, so it's starting about at my knee, and then it comes around in like a half circle, straight across in line with my shoulder. Okay, so we just finished our forward thrust, uppercut, push block in a forward stance, chamber, overhead front strike, cross stance, uppercut, forward thrust, overhead knee strike. Foot comes up and across. I'm going to do a half circle. I'm going to do an overhead rib strike, double rib strike, overhead rib strike. So it's fairly symmetrical when I'm going through that. I'm going to give you guys a rear view, and we're going to follow along. Okay? Attention, bow. I'm going to back up just a bit for you guys. Ready position, together with me, and angle block, rib strike, 4-point, forward thrust, uppercut, push block, overhead front strike, uppercut, sorry, no key up there, guys, forward thrust, overhead knee strike, foot comes up and across, half circle, overhead rib, double rib, overhead rib. So anytime I'm doing those rib strikes, guys, I want to have a little bit of hip movement in that. So for example, when I'm coming around in my hip strike, overhead rib, I'm just going to use my hips very slightly to assist with that strike. So what that's going to do is it's going to give it more power, give it a more polished look on the technique. So keep that in mind. Anytime you're doing any of those rib strikes, 4 points, anything like that, think about how you can actively use your hips to assist with the strike. When I'm doing a forward thrust, I can pull the bow back and then snap my hips into that forward thrust. It's going to give it a lot more power, give it a very nice polished look. Okay, so we're going to pick up where we were. So we had just finished, we were in our half circle, coming across, overhead rib strike, double rib strike, overhead rib strike. Is what I'm going to do now. I'm just going to adjust for you guys to give you a better angle. I'm going to look to my left. I'm going to pick up my left foot, and I'm going to do a rib strike, and now I'm now in a forward stance facing my left. Okay, and is what I'm going to do from there is I'm going to step into a forward thrust, uppercut, forward cross stance, forward stance, thrust. So we like to tease that or joke that the section of this kata is called the uppercut sandwich, okay? because there's an uppercut sandwiched in between 2 forward thrusts, which is kind of a fun way to remember it, okay? So I'm here, going to do my uppercut sandwich towards my left, rib strike, thrust, uppercut, thrust. Now, when I'm going through that movement, guys, I want you to pay attention to how high my uppercut is coming. So I don't just stop the uppercut at the point where I want to start my chamber. I want to make sure I follow through with my uppercut. So when I'm doing a cross stance uppercut, it should be coming up through my chin. So in between the chin and the nose is where you want that uppercut to go. And we want that clear definition with the strikes. We don't want those movements to blend together. Okay, let's try that again. So I'm in that horse riding stance, rib strike, forward thrust, cross stance, uppercut, forward thrust with a key up. Aye! Overhead knee strike. Now this sequence is going to be very similar to the last one that we had just done. So when I was facing you guys. Now we're going to be doing it facing the left direction of where we originally started the kata, okay? So I just finished my thrust. Now I'm going to mimic almost that exact same sequence. So I'm going to do my overhead knee strike. I'm going to pull my foot up and across so that I'm in that horse riding stance. I want to make sure I have really good posture on this, so I don't want to be leaning down or having one foot slightly ahead. I want to have good posture. My knees should be bent at about a 30-degree angle. My feet should be forward. Under control, I bring that bow up. Overhead rib, double rib, overhead rib. So that's the exact same sequence as we had done. There's going to be one additional movement that's going to separate this from the angle when I was initially moving towards you guys. Okay, so I had finished. We'll just get right up to that point. So we're going to go overhead knee strike. Foot comes up and across, just like it did when I was facing you guys. Half circle, overhead rib, double rib, overhead rib. Now we're going to add one additional movement. We're going to do a walking stance, overhead rib strike. That's going to complete us moving in that direction. So we're going to go through that. I'm going to do it from a rear follow along view. You guys can follow along with me. Okay, so I'm going to start about here for you guys. Attention, bow. Looking to my left, angle block. Overhead rib in a forward stance, overhead rib. 4-point thrust. Aye! Back stance, uppercut. Forward stance, push block, chamber, overhead front strike. Cross stance, uppercut, thrust. No key up on that thrust. From there, I'm going to bring the bow up, overhead knee strike. My foot comes up and across in a horse riding stance, half circle, overhead rib, double rib, overhead rib. I'm going to adjust for you guys a little bit. From there, I'm going to pick up my left foot, rib strike. Really get that bow right into that armpit area. Stepping forward, forward stance, front thrust. Cross stance, uppercut. I'm doing my uppercut sandwich. Chamber the bow, forward stance, thrust with a key up. Aye! Overhead knee strike. Now this is that same similar sequence that we had done before. Foot comes up and across, half circle. Overhead rib, double rib, overhead rib. Now the change up, I'm going to be taking one step forward with my left foot, rib strike, and I'm in that walking stance, okay? Let's grab a quick water, guys, and then we're going to continue on. I do love my graphite bow, guys, but I find that when I do heavy training, I sweat like really bad, and my bow sometimes get a little bit slick. So I've had it recommended to me, if you're using a graphite bow, chalk is your friend, okay? So we're going to continue on, okay? We're going to do follow along from a front view up to that point, and then we're going to add a little bit in, okay? So we're going to be moving, let's start right here. Attention, bow, ready, And I'm going to be looking to my left, angle block, overhead rib, 4-point, thrust, right, uppercut, push block in a forward stance, chamber, overhead front strike. I'm going to back up for you guys. Cross stance, uppercut, thrust, no key up, overhead knee strike. Foot comes up and across, half circle, overhead rib, double rib, overhead rib. Trying to use my hips to assist. To my left, overhead rib strike. Now I'm going to move into my uppercut sandwich, okay? So I'm going to go thrust, cross stance, uppercut, thrust. Aye! Key up. Overhead knee strike. Very similar to the sequence that we had just done. Foot comes up and across. I'm in that horse riding stance with good posture. Half circle, overhead rib, double rib, overhead rib. The one additional movement, I'm going to do a walking stance, rib strike. When I'm doing those overheads, guys, I want to make sure that I'm getting the bow well above my head. I don't want to clip my head when I do an overhead rib strike. Okay, we're going to add on to that now. Okay, we're getting close to the end of the kata. So from here, I'm going to go back 180 degrees, but all I'm going to do is I'm going to switch from that walking stance. My left foot is just going to, sorry, my right foot in the front is just going to pivot, and I'm going to go into a back stance, reverse thrust. So I was here, back stance, reverse thrust. All I'm going to do from there, shifting it into a forward stance, high line, rib strike. So it would be a high line, it'd be a head strike with the hand, with the bow underneath the armpit. So we're going to go through that section again. Here, back stance, forward stance. So that's meant to be done with a lot of power. And of course, you can still snap your hips into that one when you're going to that high line strike. It really makes the technique pop. Okay, so I was here, coming back, reverse thrust. When I'm doing my reverse thrust, so I was here, lots of power. Okay, the bow is not away from my body, it's against my body, and I'm using it to help stabilize the bow for the strike. Back stance, reverse thrust. Forward stance, high line strike. Now, I'm going to come around, reverse knee strike. So my left foot's in front, but I'm doing the reverse strike right-handed, okay? I'm going to bring the bow up, chambering it, overhead front strike, okay? From there, cross stance, uppercut again, making sure I get the tip of that bow high enough. Aye! Forward thrust, okay? So very similar movements moving out throughout the kata, okay? We're going to work on that section again. So I had just finished my walking stance. I'm going to go back stance, reverse thrust. Forward stance, high line strike. Knee strike. Chamber as I bring my knee up. Overhead front strike in a forward stance. Just going to back up for you guys. Cross stance, uppercut, thrust. Aye! Checking my stance. Is it in a good forward long stance? Okay. That back knee has to be straight. If it's got that bend in it or that back heel is coming up, it's going to look sloppy. Okay, so we want to make sure that the stances in particular have real tight accuracy and posture. Okay, so when we go through that one, excuse me, let's really focus on that. Okay, let's go through that section one more time, and then we're going to do a rear follow along. Okay, so I come across, reverse thrust, high line strike, knee, chin, overhead front strike, making sure I pay attention to that stance. Cross stance, uppercut, aye! Thrust. Okay, let's do a rear follow along. Okay, I may need to periodically adjust for you guys. Just do your best to follow along. So keep in mind this is rear follow along, so we'll do it in the same direction. Attention, bow, ready, angle block, overhead rib, 4-point, forward thrust. Aye! Uppercut, back stance. Push block, overhead front strike, cross stance, uppercut, thrust. No key up. Overhead knee strike. My foot comes up and across, half circle, overhead rib, double rib, overhead rib. I'm going to be moving to my left, rib strike, thrust, uppercut, thrust. Aye! With a key up. Overhead knee strike. Foot comes up and across, half circle, overhead rib, double rib, overhead rib. Walking stance, rib strike. Back stance, reverse thrust. Forward stance, high line strike. Overhead knee, chamber, overhead front strike. Cross stance, uppercut, thrust. Aye! Good. Okay. That takes us almost to the conclusion of the kata. So I'm going to go back to a forward-facing view. Okay. We're going to go through up that point, and then we're going to finish the kata. So follow along forward up to that point. We're going to go a little bit faster this time with a little bit more fluency. Attention, bow. Aye! Adjusting for you guys. Aye! Aye! So let's get ready to finish this kata. This is what I'm going to do from here. I'm going to take my right foot, I'm going to step back and do a high block in a forward stance. I'm going to take that same right foot, I'm going to step forward and do a low block in a forward stance. I'm going to adjust for you guys. From there, all I'm going to do is drop to a knee as I fold the bow to the left side. I'm going to drop my knee. I'm going to do a reverse high line strike. I'm going to rechamber the bow. Reverse knee strike. Now I'm going to stand up as I do an overhead rib strike. 4 point. 1, 2, 3, 4. Take my right foot stepping back. Attention, bow. I like to add a little spin at the end. Feel free to add your own personal element, particularly if you're grabbing elements out of this kata for your own competition kata. We're going to do a follow along on the rear view, and then we're going to do like a light cool down. Okay, let's get started. Attention, bow. So this would be follow along with me from a rear view, so we're going to be moving in the same direction. Ready, stance. Angle block to my left. Overhead rib, 4 point, thrust. Aye! Uppercut, back stance. Forward stance, push block, chamber, overhead front strike. Forward cross stance, uppercut, forward thrust. Overhead knee strike. Foot comes up and across, half circle, overhead rib. Remember, use your hips, guys. Double rib, overhead rib. Looking to my left, forward stance, rib strike. Now I'm going into my uppercut sandwich. Thrust, uppercut, aye! Thrust, overhead knee. Foot comes up and across, half circle, overhead rib, double rib, overhead rib. Walking stance, rib strike. Back stance, reverse thrust, forward stance, high line strike, knee, chamber, overhead front strike. Cross stance, uppercut. Forward stance, long forward stance, aye! Thrust. Take my right foot, high block. Step forward, low block. Now I want you guys to really focus on the timing with me on this one. As I land, 1, 2. As I stand, the block or the strike happens at the same time. 4-point, using my hips. Right foot comes back and across, finishing the kata, attention, bow. Okay, guys. Hope you enjoyed your crash course on Bo Kata 1. Let's just do a light cool down. So we're gonna go through, just do some shoulders, one at a time. Good, and then back to the other way. Good, and then the other side. Kata, for me, is one of my favorite ways to train. You get to practice technique while you get to go through all the movements. I read somewhere, or picked it up from somebody, I can't recall who, but kata training is like an encyclopedia for all the techniques within that particular discipline. And I thought that was just a really nice way to summarize it. A lot of people say it's practicing non-consensual sparring, things like that, and that's all good. I like it as a reminder of how I can keep refining and making my technique more and more solid. Let's just do some leg stretches to cool down our legs, or to stretch them out just a little bit. Just nice and easy. Keep that knee straight. Just kind of loosen up those joints and just kind of cool down a little bit. Doesn't have to be super high, just a light stretch so that you can get kind of the benefit of that workout and the benefit of loose muscles or warmed up muscles to get a little bit of increased flexibility. I don't know if you guys can see or not, but I always get a great workout when I do pumse or kata. So I hope you guys got a good sweat in too. So great training with everyone. We're gonna bow out and I'll do some question and answer. If anyone has any questions, I'll stick around for a few minutes. Let's bow out. Attention and bow. Thanks for training with me, guys. Have a great day. If anyone has any questions, feel free to send me a message. I'll do my very best to answer. Feel free to send a message, guys, and I'll stick around for a couple minutes. Oh, thanks, John. Hope you enjoyed the review on fundamentals. I do enjoy going back and really seeing how I can optimize pumse or kata, whether I've known it for 20 years or if I've just learned it. Thank you, sir, for the comment. Much appreciated. Thank you, sir. Okay, if there's no other questions, thank you everyone for coming back to train. Oh yeah, of course, Sean. Basics for me is where it's at. It's that foundation. Going back to the basics is a great way to improve all of your technique. Even the advanced stuff, you need that foundation. So I'm glad you enjoyed it, sir. Okay. Have a great day, guys. It was great training with everyone. If you want to train with me, feel free to train with me on Global Martial Arts University. Have a great day, guys. Take care.